This is CNN Breaking News.
Thanks for joining us this afternoon. I'm Danny Freeman, sitting in for Frederica Whitfield. We begin this hour with the breaking news on that mass shooting in Grand Blanc, Michigan, where police say a 40-year-old man opened fire while hundreds of people were worshiping. Now we're getting information that a second person has died. At least 8 others were wounded. Authorities believe the gunman also set the church on fire before getting into a fatal shootout with police. And we're now hearing audio from the first responders who arrived on the scene.
Trapped in the building. Repeat, people trapped in the building. We got children inside too.
Let's get right over to CNN's Julia Vargas Jones, who's been following this story all afternoon. Julia, what more can you tell us?
Well, Danny, that second victim, we had been reporting that some of those injuries were quite serious as those 10 people had been taken to hospital. Among those injured, we know there are children. Now, we do not know the age of this person, the second person who died today. We do know that at least two area hospitals have received some of these patients. One of them was on lockdown up until 1 p.m. this afternoon because of how close it was to this active shooter situation earlier today. A second one, the Hurley Medical Center, the closest trauma center, they're saying they also received 5 different trauma victims there, and some have now been taken to other area hospitals. All of this, as we have heard from authorities, they are expecting more victims as they make their way through the scene. I want you to hear from the police chief how that scene played out. Take a listen.
He rammed the vehicle through the front door, exited, then started firing shots. We are still trying to determine exactly when and where that fire ended up coming from and how it got started. So we believe it was deliberately set, though, by the suspect.
Now, 2 details that I'll add to that statement from the chief, Danny. One of that is that weapon that he was using was an assault rifle, later the chief clarified, and also that authorities have located a suspicious item on the property of the church that they believe could be an explosive device. Now, the key question here is, when was that device set out? Was that placed at the church before the attack that happened at the same time? And is that what was responsible for that large fire that has caused authorities to say that they expect even more victims from this attack, Danny? Now, police are saying that investigators will now carry out search warrants at the residence of the suspect, a 40-year-old man of the area, Michigan. And what they're looking for here is a motive. Now, they did not give any clue to what the relationship was from that suspect to the church at this point. That remains unclear, but I will point out that just yesterday, the church did lose their leader. The president, Russell M. Nelson, died at the age of 101. Perhaps I would wonder if there were even more churchgoers in that service that started at 10 a.m. this morning because of this tragedy. But without a question, a double tragedy for this community as they come together to mourn the loss of their leader and now of all these members of this community in Michigan. They did issue a statement earlier today. I want to read that to you from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, saying a tragic act of violence occurred today at a chapel of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Grand Blanc, Michigan. During Sunday worship services, a gunman opened fire, and early reports indicate that multiple individuals were injured. We ask for cooperation with local authorities as details become available. The church is in communication with local law enforcement as the investigation continues and as we receive updates on the condition of those affected. We offer thanks to the emergency responders who are assisting victims and their families. Now, we also have heard, Danny, as we mentioned before, from the president, some words from the governor of Michigan as well, and we will expect more details to come in the 5 p.m. hour when the news conference is expected.
Yeah, hopefully more answers to come in just about an hour when that news conference begins. All right, Julia Vargas Jones, thank you so much for your reporting. To get some more perspective on this, let's bring in retired FBI Supervisory Special Agent Jason Pack. Jason, thank you for joining us on this very, very troubling and sad and horrific story. From your perspective, what are the steps investigators are taking right now to try and determine what may have caused this man to do this?
Well, Danny, I just can't imagine what that congregation in that chapel felt this morning. You go into your safest place, their most vulnerable place just to worship, and then 5 minutes later, your whole world is upside down. So that's what the FBI, the Michigan State Police, the local township police, all the authorities that have gathered the ATF are going to be taking a look. So they made some progress. They know what happened. They know who did it. And now that big question of why is what they're looking at. You've seen them. You've seen the bomb technicians and the bomb robots there. They have to treat this place like it's booby trapped. So you're really investigating several different types of scenes here. You have a homicide scene, you have an arson scene, you have what may be a hate crime or a domestic terrorism scene. So you have to take all those things into consideration when you're processing the scene to look for clues like that and see if any of those pieces of evidence are present there.
Well, and I'll just explain to our viewers, while Jason was talking there, we actually saw what appeared to be a robot of some sort going onto a property in that area of Grand Blanc Township, Michigan. I mean, can you speak to just... It's been fascinating because it's not just a mass shooting. There's this fire element. There's clearly concern about other potential devices in the area. How challenging does all of that make it for investigators to piece together what happened here?
It's very challenging and very risky at the same time. The person who did this, you just didn't wake up this Sunday morning and say, I'm going to go do this. That pathway to violence, as the FBI says, that radicalization pathway or the pathway to violence, there's the planning, and there's the preparation, and there's the implementation after the ideology starts. So that planning, maybe, he left no stone unturned in this particular thing. He had 3 backup plans. He had the shooting, he had the fire, and perhaps an explosive device there. So law enforcement has to slow things down, methodically clear this residence to make sure there are no booby traps and no other surprises waiting for them inside the door. That's going to delay things to get to the answer to that why.
Can you talk a little bit about this more, Jason, because you mentioned it earlier, but when you're looking at something like an attack on a church, while, as law enforcement folks said, potentially hundreds of people were worshiping, does this make it clear that this could be potentially domestic terrorism or a hate crime? Do all of these factors play into something like that?
I think you have to keep your aperture very wide at the beginning of these types of investigation, Danny.
Sure. For
sure. I mean, it looks like it, right? So there's a reason that this person chose a church. They chose a church when there were people in it. And so that might go to part of that grievance or some other part of the things we just don't know about yet. Again, it is pretty early in the investigation, and hopefully at this 5 o'clock press conference with the update, we'll learn a little more, but we have to understand that these things take time. And though we want a lot of answers, and we want to surely pray and help those folks who are grieving in this community, these answers may come more slowly than the community would like.
Yeah, well said. And again, we're praying for those who are injured and hoping that that death toll does not continue to go up. 2 people killed, though, as we know, confirmed now. Jason Pack, thank you for sharing your expertise, as always. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Danny.